Hi guys, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. Today's video is going to be my January reading wrap up, and I read 4 books in the month of January, so let's just jump straight in. So the first book that I'm going to talk about was the Bookish Mamas book club pick for the month, and if you haven't seen my announcement video for the Bookish Mamas book club, then I will link that up here and in the description box down below. But the book that we read for January was The Power by Naomi Alderman, and I'm not gonna lie, this was a pretty intense book to choose for our first ever book club book. It is a lot darker than I was expecting. It was a lot more uncomfortable to read than I was anticipating it to be. But this is a dystopian novel which basically explores the gender roles that we have in society and pretty much flips them on their head. Women begin to discover that they have a suppressed power which allows them to produce electrical charges, and they can shock people and cause sparks and that kind of thing. And so women basically take the power from men, and it's written from the perspective of 4 different characters, and it's told as though it's a historical narrative. So there are emails at the beginning and at the end that kind of enclose the book, and we're reading it as though it's a historical retelling of what happened, and it focuses on 4 main characters who were historical figures from this time period. As I said, it's very dark and very uncomfortable and not really what I was expecting, but it is a very interesting look at how society might be if women were in charge. And I do think that it has some weaknesses and some plot holes. I thought that particularly at the end the author seemed to really rapidly try to wrap everything up, and it left a lot of questions, and I didn't feel fully satisfied with the way that she decided to end it. But despite the weaknesses in the storytelling and despite the plot holes, the thing that I really enjoyed about this book was that it got me thinking and it got me talking about some of the issues that are raised. And I may not agree with all of the conclusions that the author drew about the way that women would behave if they took power from men, but it definitely got me talking about it. And I have talked to a lot of different people about this book since reading it. So from the perspective of a good discussion point, I think that this book was a good choice. And I can't say that I enjoyed reading it because I think that's the wrong adjective, but I'm glad that I read it. And I'm glad that I've been able to have discussions that I've been able to have because I read this book. So don't go in expecting to read a masterpiece that is going to blow your socks off, but definitely go in expecting to have to answer some interesting questions and to feel challenged as you read it, because that's definitely what I took from it. The next book that I picked up was A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. One of my bookish resolutions for this year is to finish reading some of the series that I have begun, and if you are familiar with my feelings on Sarah J Maas, you will know that I was feeling a lot of trepidation about picking this book up. In summary, I loved the first one, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Then I immediately afterwards read A Court of Mist and Fury and felt completely let down, and so I decided to have a bit of a gap in between reading those two and reading this one. And when I picked this one up, I decided to just read it as though it was a standalone novel with characters that I was vaguely familiar with but didn't know massively, and I'm so pleased that I did, because I enjoyed this book so much more not going in with preconceptions based on the other 2 books and just accepting it for the way that it was written. And I definitely have issues with Sarah J Maas's writing. She's very repetitive in her terminology, and she loves her sexy time scenes, which she spends more time writing about sex than she does about politics, and that bugs me a little bit. But having said all of that, I really did enjoy this book. I think that she does have a way of creating characters that you just attach yourself to, and particularly the latter half of this book, when the action really got going, I was absolutely sucked in. I really enjoyed the way that she writes fight scenes and captures the emotions of the moment, and for that I think that she is absolutely wonderful. Will I continue to read on? I think so. I know that there is a bridge novel coming out in the springtime, I think, looking at some of the other characters in this book. And I think overall I've had to make my peace with Sarah J Maas's writing. I like her storytelling enough that I'm willing to overlook some of the more blatant issues that I have with her writing. For me, I don't think that she's ever going to be up on a level with Brandon Sanderson or Robin Hobb, but I am perfectly happy to accept her books as they are and just have them as kind of an easy read, guilty pleasure style novel. So I'm really pleased that I finished this trilogy and that I can say that I did it. And yeah, I did actually enjoy this more than I thought I was going to. Then after reading The Power, which was incredibly hard-hitting, and A Court of Wings of Ruin, which was just super long, I wanted a book that was really quick and easy to read, so I decided to pick up The Widow by Fiona Barton, and this was everything that I needed it to be. It's a psychological thriller, although I didn't feel massively like it fit into the thriller category so much, but it was so quick and easy to read. It's the story of the widow of a man who was accused of taking a 2-year-old girl, and she, basically the wife, stood by her husband throughout these accusations, which are kind of in the realm of child pornography and inappropriate images to do with children. So there is that. If you are uncomfortable reading about that, then this book is definitely one that you should give a miss. But within the story, he dies, and then the widow is basically given her opportunity to tell her side of the story and to say why she decided to stay with her husband. It's not super complex. It is creepy, and I think that that is more to do with the subject matter more than anything else, because it's just not comfortable reading about that type of thing. But it was fast paced, it just got on and told the story, and it was exactly what I needed to read. So I think if you don't want something that's super complex, it's not super twisty either. The big reveal at the end I saw coming an absolute mile away, but it was just what I needed to read. So I think if you want something that you can just jump into, fly through, and not really think about, then this one is definitely worth trying. The final book that I read in January was Kommandant Scale by Pam Jenoff. This is a World War II historical fiction novel about a young 19-year-old Jewish girl living in Poland who has her whole world turned upside down when 6 weeks after she gets married, Germany invade Poland, and her husband Jacob, who is a member of the Polish resistance, is forced to flee. Emma is then forced to live a double life. She has to pretend she's not Jewish, and she's given false papers and has to become Anna. And through a series of events, Anna ends up working for one of the most powerful men in Poland at that time, Herr Rickwalder, who also happens to be a Nazi. And from reading the back and from reading the premise, it sounded so interesting. I thought that I was going to be reading a really complex narrative about Anna/Emma falling in love with a Nazi and how that might make her feel the complexities of being in a situation like that. Unfortunately, this book just didn't quite reach the level that I was expecting. I would say that it is a very good entry-level World War II story if you don't want something that's particularly complex or difficult to read. It's written on a very well-trodden path, you know, it doesn't cover anything that we don't already know. It was very easy to read, but I just felt that the characters were lacking a little bit of depth, and in fact the only character that I felt any connection to at all was Herr Rickwalder, who also happened to be the Nazi. I just didn't get Anna/Emma's feelings. I didn't believe them. She was up and down the whole time, and I just didn't feel connected to her or her situation at all. I also thought that the ending fell a little bit flat. It was very convenient, and I felt like the author tried to tie up too many of the loose ends in too short a period, and it just didn't quite work for me. But having said that, I'm holding this book up against the likes of The Nightingale and All the Light We Cannot See, which happen to be two of my favorite World War II books. So I think that if you want an easy entry-level World War II book, then this probably ticks all of the boxes. But for me, I was left wanting more from the story than I actually got. And I mean, I enjoyed it. It wasn't an unenjoyable story. I just wanted a little bit more depth from it and to love it just that little bit more. So yeah, I did last year read The Orphan's Tale by Pam Jenoff, and I really enjoyed that, and that may have had something to do with my expectations going into this book. But yeah, I was just left wanting a little bit more from the story than I got, unfortunately. So they are the books that I read in the month of January. I will think I'll be filming a TBR video in the next couple of weeks, so do watch out for that. As always, thank you for watching. Do let me know what you read in the month of January and whether you enjoyed it, whether you would recommend any of the books to me. Don't forget to give me the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I'll see you all soon.